A visual illusion is the experience of seeming to see something that does not exist or that is other than it appears. The viewer perceives images that differ from reality. We all experience this phenomenon even when we don't realize it because the connections between the eye and the brain are not always on the same page. There are three main types of illusions. Literal optical illusions create images that are different from the objects that make them. Physiological ones are the effects on the eyes and brain of excessive stimulation of a specific type, and cognitive illusions are the result of unconscious inferences. Take a look at the picture. What do you see? When light hits our retina, it takes about 1/10 of a second for our brain to translate that signal into perception. Because there is a delay in this process, your brain makes a guess of the future, and sometimes this guess is not always correct. This is why we may experience optical illusions more often than we realize. One example of a common visual illusion is floaters. They are small specks which are tiny irregularities in the fluid of the eye, but people perceive them as shadowy shapes in their field of vision. Another example is when you see stars after a head injury. This is simply the activation of the neurons in the eye which the brain misinterprets as light. But how do visual illusions progress our understanding of the mind? One key approach that gained popularity in the 40s and 50s is the Gestalt theory. This emphasizes personal responsibility for actions and derives many of its ideologies from existential therapy. Husband and wife team Fritz and Laura Perls are considered to be its main influences. In the late 19th century, Germans theorized Gestalt psychology as an opposition to structuralism. The operational principle of Gestalt psychology is that the brain is holistic, parallel, and analog, with self organizing tendencies. This theory suggests that the human eye sees objects in their entirety before perceiving their individual parts. Gestalt therapy is an experiential form of therapy that moves from just the psychoanalytic approach of talk therapy. For example, a Gestalt therapist might employ the empty chair technique. In this process, the patient uses the empty chair to represent themselves, aspects of their personality, and feelings. They work through their issues in a discussion type format. While Gestalt therapy is important, visual illusions may tell us more than we think about ourselves. For example, the notions of bottom up processing, or what the brain sees, and top down processing, what the brain expects to see based on prior experience, are both ways in which our brain makes sense of the visual world. Different people perceive things differently. Recent studies suggest that an optical illusion known as the hollow mask illusion can detect if an individual suffers from schizophrenia. While the majority of the population views the mask as a convex face based on visual cues that we are unable to shut off, this is not the case for schizophrenics. Individuals with schizophrenia view a concave face because the connections between the sensory and conceptual areas in their brains do not work properly. Take a look at the hollow mask. What do you see? If you perceive the mask as convex, then you have a normal functioning brain based on this theory.